I want to deal with a question sent in by Jamie, and a very, very good one. He says something like the following, that capitalism is often equated with individualism, to be contrasted with socialism. That is, somehow capitalism celebrates the individual, whereas socialism celebrates the community or the society as a whole. Is that a fair representation, says Jamie? And he asks for me to comment. All right, let me comment. This is a matter of history. And like so often in many questions, it's the history that gives us the answer. Here, the history we need is the history of the birth of capitalism. When did capitalism become the dominant economic system? Well, it begins in Great Britain, in England, back in the 17th century, and then moves to Western Europe in the 18th century, kind of the explosive event being the French Revolution of 1789, when feudalism, the system that existed before, very top-down, rigid system with the king at the top and all of that, it gets overthrown by capitalism. In England and in France and most other places, a good bit of violence attended this overthrow of the old system and the establishment of capitalism. But what's interesting and what responds to Jamie's question is that when these fights happened, the fights of the English to overthrow feudalism there, the fights of the French, really like the fights in the United States to get rid of the old feudal King George in our War of Independence, the claim was that capitalism, the new system, would free individuals. They wouldn't be slaves the way they once had been. They wouldn't be serfs the way they had been for 1,000 years of feudalism. They would be free individuals. This notion that capitalism brought freedom to the individual, a chance to realize all of his or her potential by their own exertion of mind and body to get to the fullest possible life. Capitalism celebrated the individual. Nice idea, good story, had some truth to it. They always do, these stories. But here was the problem. As capitalism settled in, replacing feudalism in England, in Western Europe, eventually everywhere else in the world, a growing number of people living in capitalism realized that the promise of individualism was not being delivered. Oh, sure, a small proportion of individuals were free in the sense of being able to realize their potential, to develop their skills, their brains, their intellect, their understanding, their bodies, to become full human beings. But as they looked around at the mass of people living in capitalism, the mass of employees getting up, going to work each day, eking out a bare living with a wage or a salary that kept them light years from realizing their potential. You know, the kind of people written about in Charles Dickens's novels of early capitalist England, or Émile Zola's novels of early capitalist France, or Maxim Gorky's novels of early capitalist Russia. When these folks looked around, they realized that what capitalism really did was provide for the individualism of the few, and the subordination and the stunted lives and the lost opportunities and the denied potential of the many. And those people's criticisms became known as socialism, that they wanted a society that really did this freedom for everybody, not just for the rich, not just for the few, not even for those handfuls who could emerge out of awful personal and social conditions and rise above them. Heroes that those people were, they don't substitute for making it better for everybody. The socialists wanted to give everybody a real chance, a real shot at realizing their potential. And so they called themselves socialists. It's not that they don't put the individual first. It's really quite different. It's that they care about all of the individuals. They want the whole community to get a chance, not just those born into wealth or able by good luck and lots of effort to rise out of the pulling down that confronts the mass of people. So yes, capitalism came into the world boasting about an individualism, but it delivered that individualism, as it still does, to a tiny percentage of the population, leaving the rest as critics, open to and interested in the socialist alternative, which says you got to do it for everybody. Society is not about the individual. It's about the team. Like in a good sports struggle, you need the team. You need to celebrate what each one contributes. Develop each one's ability to contribute. You'll do much better than if all you do is focus on a handful of quote-unquote stars.